Good evening, and welcome to the latest happenings inside our federal machine.
Good evening, good evening. It is Thursday, December the 18th, 2025. This is Spathon bringing in another episode of The Swamp. Speaker Johnson adjourned the House for the Christmas holidays without allowing the discharge petition on the Obamacare extensions to reach the floor beforehand, and lots of Democrats are pissed off. CNN released a new poll on the favorability of Democrats, and according to CNN itself, the numbers are a lot lower, and by their quote, it's lower than the Dead Sea. And also CNN, they covered the newest report on inflation for the month of November, which shows a steady decline down to 2.7% from 3%. And 4 additional states are refusing to release their voter rolls, and the Department of Justice announced a lawsuit to turn over their voter rolls against the jurisdictions of Georgia, Illinois, Wisconsin, and the District of Columbia. And another illegal immigrant is responsible for a fatal crash, this time in Tennessee. An immigrant from China who holds a CDL license from New York. Officers administered the English proficiency test, which he unsurprisingly failed. And there's a lot more happening today, so we're gonna dive right in. And if you enjoy the video, please give the video a like if you have a second, and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the daily updates. And I might read your comment on the next episode if you decide to drop one. And any article that you'll see in the video will be linked in the description below. And I'm going to start right here with Johnson. Speaker Mike Johnson, he cancels the ACA subsidy votes before Christmas break. Speaker Johnson adjourned the House for Christmas recess, halting a bipartisan discharge petition with 218 signatures to extend Obamacare premium tax credits for 3 years. All House Democrats joined 4 Republicans, which was the minimum amount they needed to pass it, or at least to issue this discharge petition, from swing districts in the push, despite GOP leadership opposition. Without action, 4.8 million could lose coverage next year, with premiums jumping over $700 on average. Republicans favor reforms over renewal, leaving the issue unresolved as enrollment deadlines approach. And of course, this is just a generic summary made by Grok, which is the AI tool that is used on the X platform. So, and I'm going to just head to the first post with regard to this, coming from the Hodge twins. So they're conservative twins, identical twins. They're very well known in political circles, especially if you're here on the YouTube platform and you watch a lot of political content. I'm sure you know who the Hodge twins are. So anyway, they say, oh shit, I had a microphone glitch. Man, this microphone, man, I'm telling you what. All right, so let's try that again. Every single member of Congress should be fired and most thrown in prison. And they are reposting Todd Starnes, who says Speaker Johnson cancels Friday's votes, sending the House home early for Christmas. No more votes for the rest of the year. The do-nothing Congress wraps up the year by literally doing nothing. And it's not just Republicans, or it's not just Democrats, rather, that are pissed off. Obviously, Republicans are pissed off, too. There's a lot that they should have done this year, especially since we're coming up on the midterms next year. And there's a lot to think about with regard to the midterms, even though regardless of the midterms, like the SAVES Act absolutely should have been passed by now. Absolutely ridiculous that Mike Johnson hasn't put that to the floor yet, as well as a whole bunch of other pieces of legislation that a lot of people are pretty up in arms about it. So I'll just read a couple of comments. So, damn, I wish I had a job where I only need to show up roughly 100 days a year while it pays me around $174,000. Yeah, that ain't no shit. Allows me to get rich via insider trading and NGOs. Gives me a slush fund to make victims of SA and SH go away. Amen. Stop pretending they will ever do anything. Absolutely. That's why a lot of people are pissed off at Republicans. They don't do nearly enough. And they should be paid by the hour, not a salary. Hell yeah, I'm all about that. Can you imagine having a vacation this long at work? That's fantastic. Speaker Johnson and Leader John Thune, you guys have some gig going on. Plus, somehow on the public's dime, you all become rich. How is that possible? I don't get it. Did you know people in the private sector get 1 day for Christmas? Yeah, including yours truly. I have to work on Christmas Eve. I have to work on the day after Christmas, but I do get Christmas off at least. But to be fair, in my line of work, they usually run skeleton crews on the last week, especially the week following Christmas. But because I'm very good at what I do, I'm sure I'm going to be working all the way through it, but that's okay because I love my job. I absolutely love my job. Anyway, wow, I still have to go to work until Christmas Eve. Yep, same here. Wouldn't that be nice to just, yeah, we're done here. I mean, must be nice. Anyway, so let's just go ahead and roll on to the next one. Rep. Joe Niguas. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I'm bad with names. Democrat, he says 214 House Democrats and 4 House Republicans have now signed the discharge petition to force a vote on extending the ACA tax credits for working families. Speaker Johnson must call the vote. And it looks like he posted this 10 hours. Well, you did post it 10 hours ago, which I believe was right before Speaker Johnson adjourned for the rest of the year. And anyway, he follows up and says, not next year, not next month, today. So we'll hear his quick clip
Speaker
here
Johnson
that he posted.
Has a very simple choice to make. Does he send home the Republican Congress for the holidays and let these tax credits expire? Or does he do
the Democrats
right
going
thing
home too?
Now that House Democrats and 4 of his own
They
members
can pretend that they're not, but
have
they
signed
are.
a discharge petition compelling a vote that would otherwise not ripen until early January. I and my colleagues here will continue to make the case that the Speaker ought to do the latter. He ought to call that vote today. Let the chips fall where they may, and let us work together to ultimately secure health care for millions of Americans.
Now, look, I'm not a political genius or anything, but assuming that it did go to the floor for a vote and assuming that it would have passed the House, which it sounds like it probably would have by a razor-thin margin, it's to go to the Senate, correct? And once it gets to the Senate, it's going to die in the Senate. It's not going to pass in the Senate. So, of course, it's political posturing. It's trying to please their base. I get how they do it. So, but anyway, we got this from Rep. Adelita Grijalva. She says 218 members forced a discharge petition to extend ACA subsidies. Speaker Johnson must bring this to a vote. Families can't wait. Now, she posted this 7 hours ago, which I believe was after he decided to adjourn for the rest of the year.
Hi there. Just participated in a press conference with Leader Jeffries about ACA. 218 members of Congress forced another discharge petition, this time for the subsidies, to extend them for 3 years to make sure that we have time, if we need to revise and need to improve the Affordable Care Act, that we have the time to do that. So what's happening now is Speaker Johnson has not indicated that he will call a vote, which means we're going into next year when people have to sign up for their health care plans without those subsidies.
Blame Democrats.
And what that means is 400,000 Arizonans will likely not be able to afford their health care.
No.
So we're demanding
middle-class Americans can't afford a whole lot of anything these days.
On ACA subsidies today.
Yeah, and Americans definitely can't afford Obamacare. It's Obamacare, lady. Obamacare. And I really shouldn't throw too much flack at Hakeem Jeffries. Anytime that I drop a video covering Hakeem Jeffries, it actually does really well on my channel, like 1,000 views plus. I'd have to actually check it again. It's been a while since I've checked my playlist and sorted by most popular, but there for a while, like pretty much all of my most popular videos were covering Hakeem Jeffries. So y'all really like hearing about Timu Obama. And speaking of which, the weekend's coming up. So I'm going to have to make a video just focusing on Hakeem Jeffries because I could just go to his profile and just see what the hell he's been up to the last week. Probably a lot of nonsense. I'm sure he's been pretty pissed off. So anyway, from the White House, America turns 250. President Donald J. Trump on Freedom 250 and the 2026 celebration that honors our nation like never before. Let's give it a watch.
In my campaign for president, I pledged to give America the most spectacular birthday party the world has ever seen for America's 250th anniversary on July 4th next year.
Gonna be a banger.
We've had big celebrations to commemorate the 250th birthdays of the Army, the Navy, and the United States Marines, but there is much more to come. We're going to have a good time. As we bring in 2026, Americans across the nation will see the iconic Washington Monument illuminated with festive birthday lights to honor the start of this historic anniversary year. Then from June 25th to July 10th of next year, we will host the Great American State Fair on the National Mall, featuring pavilions from all 50 states, highlighting breathtaking innovations and celebrating America's exceptional history and culture. Frankly, you'll never see anything like it, and you'll never see anything like it again.
I don't know, man. Once in a lifetime.
In the fall, we will host the first ever Patriot Games.
A big milestone.
An unprecedented 4-day
what a time to be alive.
Event featuring the greatest high school athletes, one young man and one young woman from each state and territory. But I promise there will be no men playing in women's sports. You're not going to see that. You'll see everything but
no men.
As I first announced in 2020, we will build the National Garden of American Heroes featuring statues of all-time greatest Americans. And we will build a
put our statues back.
As we celebrate 250
progressives tore down our statues.
Of
Remember
American
that?
Freedom. We are the only major city. We are the only major capital. We are the only major place without a triumphal arch, a beautiful triumphal arch, one like in Paris where they have the beautiful arch in Paris. They call it Arc de Triomphe.
Not familiar. I know what he's talking about in Paris, though.
DC very soon.
That like arch-looking building thingy.
In the very near future. And next spring, we will host
but we got the Washington Monument, though, right? To celebrate the establishment.
To rededicate our country as one nation under God. We're not changing that. There are a lot of people who would like to see it. It'll never happen.
Yeah, well, too fucking bad. It is one nation under God. Always will be.
One-of-a-kind UFC event here at the White House. It'll be the greatest champion fighters in the world, all fighting that same night. The great Dana White is hosting.
And I forgot they were going to do that, or that they are doing that.
But all of this is just a beginning.
That's going to be wild.
2026 will be a celebration of America like no other, honoring our nation in all of its glory. To help carry out these exciting plans, we have created a new public-private partnership. It's called Freedom 250. Working with states, companies, and organizations across the country, we will renew the patriotism, pride, and pioneering spirit of America and lay the groundwork for the next 250 years of independence and freedom. This will be a time like you've never had in your lives. America 250. Thank you. I love you all.
All right, man. Freedom 250, huh? I'm going to have to look up some more information on that. So the semi-quincentennial, I think I got that right. Did I get that right? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. But I think it's the semi-quincentennial. Maybe I got that backwards. Maybe it's like quincentennial, whatever. Okay, but anyway, what I'm trying to say is the 250th. All right, so RNC research from 9 hours ago. How are voters feeling about Democrats? The CNN says Democrats, in the minds of the American people, are lower than the Dead Sea. My God.
How are
CNN.
voters feeling about Democrats right now?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats, in the minds of the American public, are lower than the Dead Sea. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look. The net approval rating for Democrats in Congress, you said it, Kate Baldwin, the lowest ever. Look at this. Overall,
lowest
they are
ever.
55 points underwater. Their approval rating is south of 20%. It's even worse when you look at independents. Look at this. Negative 61 points. That means that their approval rating is 61 points lower than their disapproval rating. Quinnipiac has been polling this question for the better part of the 21st century.
Man.
They have never found Democrats, at least those in Congress, in worse shape than they are right now.
Wow, man, that makes me want to pop my New Year's Eve champagne early. Not that I got any, because I don't drink anymore, but anyway. Wow, man, what freaking numbers, dude. The lowest ever that they've been able to find. And they said that on CNN. It's absolutely wild. So, okay, so this comes from the GOP. Danielle Alvarez calls out Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats' fake narrative. I don't think that anybody, even his own party, listens to what Hakeem Jeffries says. All that the Democrats do is lie, which is like 99% true. It was, in fact, Joe Biden who devastated our country. I might push back a little bit and say it wasn't exclusively Joe Biden single-handedly, but he had a lot of people around him who were quite nefarious, to say the least.
Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has also reacted to this speech. He called it unhinged and said that the president refuses to acknowledge that it's his tariffs that are increasing prices.
Wait a minute. He's talking about Trump's speech from last night. That wasn't unhinged at all. It was a celebration of everything that was accomplished this year. Hardly unhinged.
For the American
Anybody's
people.
Unhinged is Hakeem
What
Jeffries.
is your reaction to that?
I don't know that anybody, even his own party, listens to what Hakeem Jeffries says. All that the Democrats can do is lie, and they try to blame President Trump and spin the narrative when it was, in fact, Joe Biden who, again, devastated our nation by opening our borders, by creating inflation that hit as high as 9%, was on average at 7%. It was a disaster for our country, and again, in one short year. The most shocking thing about the speech last night was that in 19 minutes, the president was able to discuss and tick off all of the great wins for our people.
That was a short speech,
Of course, he acknowledged that there is more work to do. He is laser focused on the future. He is laser focused on our country and on his America First agenda.
Yeah, and I covered the whole thing on the Swamp last night. I'm trying to think what time it was. I think 8 o'clock this morning. I dropped the video that just covered the speech itself. That way you don't have to watch the entire, 2 or hour and a half video that I did last night. But yeah, it was like 15 or 17 minutes, like she said. And yeah, man, he covered a lot in a pretty short amount of time. So, and speaking of Hakeem Jeffries, Democrats, they were polled earlier this year. And the big question that they were asked is, who is the leader of the Democratic Party? Well, they didn't say Hakeem Jeffries. Most respondents, or at least the highest, the Democrat who received the highest numbers among those who were polled was AOC. So I'll take that as somewhat of a white pill, I guess. All right, whatever. So Rapid Response 47, CNN on the brand new inflation report, which shows core inflation at its lowest in nearly 5 years. Clearly, this is another step in the right direction, obviously.
Brand new numbers on inflation. You can see the annual rate of inflation down a little bit in November. It was at 3% the last time we got a reading. Now it has ticked down, cooling slightly to 2.7%. Let's get right to CNN's Matt Egan
Regardless,
for the latest
that ain't slightly,
numbers.
Man. That's a big drop.
Below
Are you kidding?
Matt.
It dropped 0.3%
right,
in a
John.
month.
Finally, some good news on the number one economic issue.
Dude, that is a drastic fall.
So the government just put out this new report saying that consumer prices were up by 2.7% year over year in November. That is much better than the forecast from economists.
Better, dude. It's phenomenal.
3%. And as you mentioned, this is a step in the right direction relative to September,
they hate to
which
report
was
it.
at 3%. Now, I can't tell you what it was in October because the government shutdown messed with the collection of
it was lower
data
than
during
3%
that month. But clearly, this is another step in the right direction.
Yeah, let's call it 2.85%. Whatever. Regardless, it was lower than 3%, and it's still going lower. And Democrats, they got to be seething over that because I show it on the Swamp all the time. At least I come across it during doing research for the show because I read a lot of posts by Democrats day after day, and they keep saying that Trump is inflation is skyrocketing out of control. The cost of groceries are going up. The cost of everything's going up, which, I mean, of course, generally speaking, everything always goes up gradually because it's called inflation. On average, it's 2% year over year. And we're still above that 2.0 mark where they want us to be, where the Federal Reserve wants us to be. And it's heading in the right direction, according to CNN. All right. So Senator John Barrasso, by reining in Biden's heavy-handed bureaucrats, Senate GOP is saving Americans $180 billion. This is from Steph Kite. Steph Kite, I'm assuming that's how her name is pronounced. So who is Steph Kite exactly? She's the co-author of Axios Hill Leaders and Spill the Senate Tea to StephAxios.com. Okay, whatever. So she's a journalist. All right, Senate GOP undid a whopping 23 Biden rules this year, more than in all other years combined since the CRA became law in 1996. Holy cow. Federal rules overturned through congressional review act by year. And of course, we've got 2025, enormous amount at 23 compared to 2021, where it's just 3. And then again, Trump 1.0 got 16 that were overturned. And then back in 2001 under Bush, it was just 1. That's all it was, just 1. And let's see if they got anything additional here. Actually doesn't. It doesn't look like it. Happy Wednesday. How Jeffries beat Johnson, new Senate momentum, so on and so forth. I don't know. That's kind of strange. This doesn't appear to be tied to that post, but whatever. Anything I click on, I link, so it'll be linked. Okay, so we'll head to the next post from Senate Republicans. Tim Walz is under fire for a massive $1 billion fraud scheme in Minnesota. Angie Craig's response, praising Walz's aggressive approach. She'd rather grovel for his endorsement than stand up for what's right. And we do have an article from the Daily Caller, which will not going to the profile. I want to go to the article. Senate hopeful praises Tim Walz after fraud engulfed the state on his watch. A massive fraud scandal is rocking her state, but Democratic Minnesota Rep. Angie Craig has been conspicuously silent. Craig, a 4-term lawmaker running in a contested Democratic primary in Minnesota's 2026 Senate race, has largely avoided commenting on the multi-year welfare fraud schemes that occurred under Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz's watch. When asked by the Daily Caller News Foundation whether the Walz administration bears responsibility for failing to protect stolen taxpayer dollars, Craig effusively praised the two-term governor and insisted they both have taken action to prevent fraud in the North Star State. Quote, I think the governor is taking and his team are taking an aggressive approach to crack down on fraud in Minnesota, Craig told the DCNF in a brief interview Tuesday. They're prosecuting and putting the folks who were perpetrating the crime in jail. I somehow doubt that. I think that's the feds who were doing that. Craig's defense of Waltz comes after he said he takes full responsibility for the fraud scandal, which federal prosecutors say could have exceeded $1 billion in losses. So he's also taken full responsibility with regard to the millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that was funneled into terrorist organizations abroad in other countries, including Somalia. Quote, fraud happened. We need to take accountability. Ultimately, me, Waltz said during a press conference on Friday. Okay, so are you okay with getting criminally charged with this? Because you probably should. Minnesota Democrats are facing scrutiny following federal prosecutions charging dozens of individuals, the vast majority of Somali descent, with stealing more than $300 million from the federal child nutrition program through the Minnesota-based nonprofit Feeding Our Future. In separate schemes, groups allegedly stole taxpayer money from a federally funded housing program and autism treatment services. At least 10 of the 78 individuals charged or convicted in the Feeding Our Future scheme since 2022 were residents of Craig's district, including Amy Bach, the nonprofit's founder. Prosecutors have dubbed the cases the largest COVID-19 fraud scheme in the country. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the federal child nutrition program funded sites across Minnesota to provide meals to children. Bach oversaw a sprawling scheme in which sites fraudulently claimed to be serving millions of meals to children, according to the Department of Justice. A federal jury convicted Bach in March of multiple counts, including wire fraud and bribery. Craig's constituents, Abdiaziz Shafi Farah and Mohammed Jama Ismail, were sentenced to 28 years and 12 years, respectively, for stealing over $40 million alongside their co-conspirators, Farah and Ismail, who were owners and operators of Empire Cuisine and Market, LLC, a restaurant in Craig's district, helped to launder the fraudulent proceeds, according to the DOJ. And Abdimajid Mohammed Nur was also sentenced to 10 years in connection with the scheme originating out of the Empire Cuisine and Market. Other constituents implicated include Dorothy Jean Moore, who was charged in June of 2025 for defrauding the federal program of $1.4 million. Asha Jama, okay, so you get the names here. I'm horrible with names. I'm going to butcher these names, so they're going to be right there. They also pled guilty for their role in the laundering scheme. And amid her... Oh, wait, hold on. What is this? Okay, yeah, just idiot politicians getting their selfies. Amid her silence on the ongoing fraud scandal, Craig told the DCNF she's worked to combat fraud at the federal level in recent years. Quote, I've been aggressive to make sure that there's a federal layer to this as well, Craig said on Tuesday. The Senate hopeful says she introduced a bill in 2022 to crack down on fraud in federal programs, but the DCNF could not identify fraud prevention legislation introduced by Craig that year. The DCNF found legislation sponsored by Craig in later years that would have toughened penalties for fraud in federal programs in response to the scandal's early revelations. For 2023, Fighting Their Fraud Act would have doubled the fine for fraudulent activity related to child nutrition programs from $25,000 to $50,000. Meanwhile, her 2024 Stop Fraud in Federal Programs Act would have increased the penalty for federal program bribery and required sponsors to use third-party auditors, which, according to her office, would ensure that sponsors like Feeding Our Future cannot self-certify that they have delivered meals. I think that's a fantastic idea. Neither bill advanced beyond introduction and had zero co-sponsors, of course. A spokesperson for Craig did not respond to the DCNF's request for comment before publication. Republicans have excoriated the Waltz administration for failing to stop the brazen fraud schemes. Waltz had blamed the massive fraud scandal in part on the state's culture of generosity. President Donald Trump responded to the developing fraud scandal in late November by pledging to revoke the temporary protected status of Somalis in Minnesota, while Immigration and Customs Enforcement has ramped up enforcement operations in the weeks since. Waltz has had 7 years to address and stop the fraud, House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, the highest-ranking Minnesota Republican, said on Tuesday. It wasn't until President Trump made this a national issue that Waltz started to pretend that he cares about his constituents' tax dollars supporting a terrorist group in Somalia. Accountability is coming. Our dishonest failed governor must and will answer for his complete incompetence. Emmer added. And it goes on just a little bit from there. So if you want to finish that up, that will be linked. And I'm going to roll on to the next from Ashley Moody, Senator Ashley Moody. Although the Democrats say going after fraud is a bipartisan issue, their actions say exactly the opposite. They have no interest in changing the status quo despite these rampant schemes. We cannot continue to hemorrhage money by dumping it into the hands of bad actors. This is not only bad policy, it's blatant disregard for taxpayers and their hard-earned dollars. Let's take a listen to this.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for holding this important hearing at such a point in time that is incredibly important for all Americans. I am the newest United States Senator.
Yeah, from my state.
Proud to be here,
but
I didn't come here to do things like we always do them, business as usual. And one of the most disheartening things that I have experienced in the last year is our country is going into debt faster than any other time in history.
Yep, it's only getting worse.
So we do things as usual. We just found out that there's more fraud built into these subsidies than we ever imagined from our own government watchdogs. So let's do things as usual. I mean, it's insane, the irresponsibility of that approach and our obligations to the American people. And so I appreciate this hearing because I think it's important that all of us learn more.
Not that it's probably going to go anywhere.
And come up with ways to do things better for the people that we represent. And specifically, I want to talk about a report that just came out in terms of the fraud that is in some of these subsidies. Just last week, the Nonpartisan Independent Government Accountability Office issued a bombshell report showing all kinds of egregious fraud, like tens of thousands of dead people receiving subsidies, people claiming more than 365 days worth of benefits in a year, government accepting clearly disqualifying information. And yet, as we meet here, we have people on the other side of the aisle that are continuing to push to nullify a president's rule that was meant to crack down on some of this fraud. The proposal, at least out of the Senate, was to just continue doing things business as usual, keep pushing taxpayer money out the door, even though we know so much of it is going to bad actors. And I refuse to accept that. As a former federal prosecutor, as a former federal attorney general in Florida, I refuse to accept that business as usual is going to cut it for this country's future success. And so I think we need to create something that works just as badly as we need to fix what is currently broken.
Well, very well said. And I hope they do fix what's broken. I'm just sure it's extremely convoluted and it's probably literally everywhere you could possibly look. And AAG Harmeet Dillon from just 3 hours ago, promises made, promises kept. The Office of Civil Rights just sued 4 more jurisdictions, Georgia, the District of Columbia, Illinois, and Wisconsin, for failing to hand over their voter rolls. The Justice Department will make elections great again.
Hi,
let's go,
I'm
man.
here with an important update on our election integrity litigation here in the Civil Rights Division at the DOJ. Happy to report that, as promised, today we sued 4 additional jurisdictions that have refused to comply with our legal requests under federal election laws. And they include Georgia, the District of Columbia, Illinois, and Wisconsin. We also got voluntary compliance from 3 additional jurisdictions today, bringing the total to 10 states that are voluntarily complying with our requests to share their voter data so that we can help those jurisdictions and all states ensure that only American citizens are voting only one time in our federal elections every election cycle. And rest assured, even as people are getting ready to pack up for Christmas and go visit their family and friends, we are not going to rest here at the DOJ. We're going to continue this work and ensure that we either get compliance from every jurisdiction or, unfortunately, we sue them. So I'm here to make sure that we make our federal elections great again and that every citizen has confidence in them. And that's the commitment of this Department of Justice. Thank you very much and happy holidays.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous that she even get to this point. It's already required. If the federal government's requiring or even requesting voter rolls, they have no obligation to withhold that. I mean, they're federal voter rolls. So I don't see how in the hell that they're going to end up losing any of these cases because they just want to know what the simple voter rolls look like. So we'll see where that goes. Hopefully they're going to move on that quickly Hopefully it's not going to get tied up in the courts for God knows how long. All right, ADM, Brian Christine MD, and he is with, I'm trying to remember which this, it's not CDC, right? No, HHS, that's who it is, the Department of Health and Human Services. And he says, today I signed the public health message to inform healthcare providers, families, and policymakers that current evidence does not support claims that puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries are safe and effective treatments for pediatric gender dysphoria.
Hello,
Give this a
I am
listen
Admiral Brian
and a watch.
Christine, the Assistant Secretary for Health at the Department of Health and Human Services. Today, we are taking decisive action to protect America's children from chemical and surgical mutilation and restore evidence-based medicine and gold standard science to the forefront of federal health policy. What we found in our gender dysphoria report was alarming. From 2016 to 2019, the number of sex-rejecting procedures performed on children tripled, and despite mounting evidence of harm and reversals by European countries, the previous administration and my predecessor were driven by a warped ideology and a radical political agenda. And that is why I am signing this public health message to ensure healthcare providers understand their responsibility to put children's health and safety first. As medical professionals, we have an ethical obligation to provide excellent care to our patients, informed by the very best evidence that we have. As such, we should refuse interventions that pose risks of harm because our first mission is to do no harm. For the safety of our children, medical professionals should refuse to provide puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgical interventions. We prioritize comprehensive psychosocial assessment and support. We address co-occurring mental health conditions. We provide compassionate, developmentally appropriate counseling, and we educate young families about the weak evidence for medical interventions. This is not about politics. It's about science. It's about safety. It's about transparency, and it's about trust. Our mission is to ensure every American, especially every child, receives medical care that is evidence-based, ethical, and worthy of the public's confidence. We need strong, healthy boys and girls that will have the chance to know the joy of coming together as one and starting their own family. Protecting our children's health and their future is good medicine. Protecting our children's health and their future is also our moral obligation. Today, I am offering the opportunity for every medical professional to reject harmful, irreversible procedures on minors and instead to prioritize medicine that puts the health of America's children first. We will continue to be guided by gold standard science, a dedication to radical transparency, and a commitment to truth. President Trump and Secretary Kennedy will stand for no less. Thank you. God bless our vulnerable children, and God bless our glorious republic.
Amen. God bless the children. Gold standard science. It's the way it should have always been from day one. And that's what happens when our federal government gets radicalized. And I got this from NIH. HHS Gov experts recently convened to discuss a new report on pediatric gender dysphoria and the potential harms of medicalized treatment. Here is what they had to say. And this is going to be over on YouTube. Actually, well, they've got the video here too. So let me see. This might actually be a much long. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is a way longer video. But I will link this also. So that'll be in the description below if you want to take a look at this video in its entirety. It's almost 2 hours long, so I definitely don't have time for that. But at least we'll hopefully get at least the cliff notes here with a 3.5-minute video. So let's check this out.
We were here today to discuss the HHS report on pediatric gender dysphoria, review of evidence and best practices, the final peer-reviewed version of which was published on November 19th. And every single systematic review on this question to date has found that despite the positive reportings of mental health benefits in these research studies, those reports are profoundly uncertain and not reliable, again, because of all of these methodological problems.
We essentially looked for all the evidence that has been published on the effects of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries on minors, and looked at the strength of that evidence using reproducible, transparent methodologies from evidence-based medicine, and concluded, along with the health authorities in Scandinavian countries and independent researchers in the UK and around the world, that the evidence for these for the benefits of these interventions are the evidence is extremely weak.
This was a very important report. It is the first time that a major North American healthcare organization has commissioned a systematic evidence appraisal of pediatric gender medicine, specifically of pediatric medical transition or the use of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries in minors with gender-related distress.
Part of why these practices are controversial is that they are ethically problematic insofar as they appear to run counter to some well-established ethical norms, particularly for pediatric medicine. The state of the science does not support the notion that these interventions are likely to bring about benefits, even the hoped-for benefits in improving mental health of young people.
Personally, I'm here because growing up as a gender non-conforming child, I do see the risk of over-treatment and over-diagnosis if we have not been paying attention to the evidence and what is the evidence supporting this treatment model.
The report concluded that the evidence of benefits for puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for the purposes of treating gender dysphoria, the certainty of benefits is very low, and that this likelihood of harms is much higher. This unfavorable harm-benefit ratio is at odds with standard principles of medical ethics.
The benefits from treatments for gender dysphoria in young people are very uncertain. And the harms we don't know much about, but the harms are more certain. So
that's what the leftists say. Well, you
total,
don't know.
When you look at the situation, we have uncertain benefits.
We don't want to know
harms,
the harms.
And this would speak
we know it's harmful.
Other types of approaches for young
That's
people experiencing gender dysphoria rather than medicalization.
The risk-benefit profile of medicalization for minors with gender dysphoria is unfavorable. The costs outweigh any purported benefits. Very unfortunately, in the United States, this issue has become politically polarized. But there's nothing intrinsically political about this issue. It's straightforwardly medical.
Progressives, they want to make it a political issue.
Along party lines.
All right, man. Good news, man. That's good that they had that roundtable, that discussion, and they're making headway with it. But the left, they'll say puberty blockers are reversible. No, they're not reversible. You can't hit the pause button on puberty. You can't pause it for 10 years and then start puberty in your mid-freaking-20s. That's not gold standard science. That's just psychotic and delusional. Okay, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Moving on to the immigration part of the episode. Hernandez Valentin Santos decided to put the pedal to the metal when an ICE vehicle was behind him in traffic, prompting the officers to pursue. He drove recklessly while attempting to evade arrest and then resisted our officers once they stopped him. Our officers saw open intoxicant containers in the vehicle and a six-pack of alcohol on the vehicle's floor. They also determined that he entered the U.S. illegally, so he's now in ICE custody. Let's take a look at what happened. Just a quick 16 seconds. Can't forget the dramatic music. Okay, well, extremely short clip, like 5 seconds. Okay, so Secretary Kristi Noem with Homeland Security. For almost a month, the Washington Post and other media outlets have been pushing a demonstrably false story about Coast Guard policy on hate symbols. The 2025 language of the U.S. Coast Guard Harassing Behaviors Prevention, Response, and Accountability Instruction, coupled with the existing language in the Coast Guard Civil Rights Manual, strengthens our ability to report, investigate, and prosecute those who violate long-standing policy. The November 20th policy and lawful order was issued to double down on that language and further clarify the display of divisive and hate symbols and flags prohibited as a violation of Coast Guard policy and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The pages of the superseded and outdated policy will be completely removed from the record, so no press outlet, entity, or elected official may represent the Coast Guard to politicize their policies and lie about their position on divisive and hate symbols. Finally, the politicized holdup of Admiral Lundy's nomination has gone on long enough, and it needs to end. He has given nearly 39 years of distinguished service to the Coast Guard, this country, and the American people. He should be confirmed without delay, which, of course, it doesn't sound like that's going to happen until at least after the end of the year. I know the House, they just adjourned. I'm assuming the Senate's probably going to do the same thing. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the Senate that has to confirm him. All right, so moving to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It's like we got one more from them. ICE was born on a mission. And let me go back. Defending the homeland. Will you answer the call to serve? And as you can see, I already got that linked up above. or down in the description below. And we'll take a look at this.
September 11th, 2001. Nearly 3,000 Americans lost because terrorists were here illegally. From that day, ICE was born. America's first united immigration, counterterrorism, and homeland security effort.
A lot of Democrats voted for him,
ICE
too.
is refocused on its mission and making America safer. Crime and gang violence is falling. Fentanyl deaths at a 5-year low. And the worst of the worst are being sent back. America needs you. Join ICE. Apply today at join.ice.gov.
Oh, yeah, I'm honestly kind of surprised that they're still showing advertisements for joining ICE because they've already gotten like 200,000 applicants, and the initial number of positions that they were looking to fill was around 10,000. And I believe that they're going to be extending that next year. I believe I read somewhere it could be up to 20,000 in total that they're looking to staff additional on top of what they've already got. So moving on to John Kennedy, a lot of the people calling President Trump's strikes on narco-terrorists illegal are just wrong. If you wanted to hide something from them, you'd put it in a law book, especially in the chapter on the Constitution. Yeah,
I think some of the people who are criticizing the president are in good faith, but a lot of them are just
he's talking about Senator Ron Paul or Rand Paul. I mean,
if you what the president is doing is perfectly legal, whether you agree with it or not. Another thing, but it's perfectly illegal under the Constitution, and a lot of the people criticizing him, well, if you wanted to hide something from him, you just put it in a law book, especially the chapter on the Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, we all have seen very similar operations under President Obama, under President Bush in Panama
killed American
with
citizens.
the drug trade and Noriega. So, Senator Kennedy, thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, like Trump ain't killing American citizens like Obama was with his drone strikes. And we got this from CBP. Looks like they've got a link to an X post, or it looks like the same one. So this is going to be translated from Spanish. Families with children who try to reach the U.S. illegally are deported and do not receive asylum in the U.S. This is probably in Spanish. Okay, well, it's in Spanish, but I think we get the idea. I'm sure he's just going to reiterate his statement on his post in extra words, but we'll go ahead and move on to the next thing. Homeland Security, yet another avoidable tragedy caused by the Biden administration and sanctuary policies. Yisong Huang, a Chinese illegal alien with a commercial driver's license, tragically killed an American in Tennessee. Following the crash, Huang failed an English proficiency test. In 2023, Huang admitted to Border Patrol agents that he had entered the country unlawfully and was a citizen of China. Despite his admission of breaking the law, the Biden administration released him into the country and provided him with both work authorization papers and a Social Security card. DHS and U.S. Department of Transportation are ending this chaos. And this is from the New York Post. A tour bus driver charged in fatal wreck entered U.S. illegally and was still issued NYS license. I'm assuming that's New York State, but we're going to get to the bottom of that once I get this article opened up from the New York Post. Also linked below. Tour bus driver charged in fatal wreck entered U.S. illegally and was still issued NYS license. The Chinese national charged in a deadly tour bus wreck on a Tennessee highway had entered the U.S. illegally, but was still issued a driver's license by New York State, the Post has learned. Huang Yisong, 54, crossed the U.S.-Mexico border in 2023 and was released under Biden administration policies, eventually ending up in Brooklyn and snagging a commercial driver's license from the state. Federal Homeland Security and Transportation officials said. Far too many innocent Americans have been killed by illegal aliens driving semi-trucks and big rigs, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said in a statement to the Post. And that's the individual there who killed an innocent American with his reckless driving, doesn't even know how to read English signs, failed the English proficiency test. And Kristi Noem goes on to say, and yet sanctuary states around the country have been issuing illegal aliens commercial driver's licenses. Yisong was taken into custody on vehicular homicide charges following last week's crash on Interstate 40 West that killed a 31-year-old truck driver and injured several others, officials said. The Fed said Yisong admitted to U.S. Border Patrol agents he had entered the states illegally, but was released with work papers and a Social Security card, which allowed him to get a New York State commercial driver's license earlier this year. He entered the country illegally, and they gave him a Social Security card. How do you like that? The New York State Department of Motor Vehicles, which has denied that the agency wrongfully approved Yisong for the license, said Wednesday that it was issued to him on April 11th, 2025, after he presented legit federal documents. The issuing of commercial licenses to migrants in sanctuary states like New York has been an issue pushed to the forefront by the Trump White House, part of the president's crackdown on illegal immigration. The Trump administration is ending the chaos, Noam said. The brave men and women of ICE are working nonstop to get criminal illegal aliens out of our communities and off our roads. Last week, U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy threatened to pull $73 million in federal highway funding from the Empire State after an audit claimed that foreign-born drivers were routinely issued licenses. It's not just that Joe Biden let millions of migrants flood into our country illegally, Duffy said in a statement. His administration doled out the documentation these unqualified foreign drivers needed to obtain trucking licenses and operate 40-ton missiles on the highway. Yasong was allegedly driving a tour bus along I-40 in Tennessee on December 9th when authorities said he became distracted while watching a video on his phone and smashed into a tractor trailer. So New York State might actually use a statement like that to push back on withholding the funding by claiming that, well, the federal government gave him legal papers. I mean, he had legal papers. He had a legal Social Security card, even though he entered the country illegally. The federal government gave him legal papers, so we processed the legal paperwork. We followed whatever the law is for the state of New York, and we gave him a commercial driver's license. But still, that doesn't just give them just a pass on all of these illegal truck drivers to just continue driving, especially when the Department of Transportation has issued an immediate stoppage of doing exactly that and revoking all of these driver's licenses. So we'll have to see what New York State does, but they're looking to lose over $70 million worth of funding if they don't get their ass in gear and revoke those licenses. I believe that Sean Duffy gave them only 30 days to comply, and it had to have been at least a week or two ago by now. And this is from US DOT Rapid Response, and it's a quote saying, DHS, Biden released Chinese illegal alien with New York CDL, killed Tennessee trucker, feds blast sanctuary licensing practices. And it's another, I believe it, yeah, okay, so this one's going to be from Breitbart, which I'm not going to get into the details because we just read it from the New York Post, but that'll be linked also if you want a second view of that article or of the situation that happened. And we'll move on to U.S. immigration's another one. Law enforcement showed up for law enforcement. Minneapolis PD leadership choosing to stand officers down from assisting ICE when a violent mob surrounded and attacked our officers is a dereliction of duty. Thank you for reporting on this, Julio Rosas 11. And U.S. Marine field reporter, author, fiery but mostly peaceful. Make sure to subscribe below. And yeah, I mean, that's a good thing that he's making it aware that this is happening, even though I believe that ICE agents should be arresting every single person that lays a finger on them for assaulting a federal agent that could carry up to 20 years in prison, or even just standing out in the middle of the road. If they're blocking the roadway, if they're blocking the normal operations of ICE officers, that carries up to 8 years in prison. I don't know why they're not prosecuting these people. They're just letting them do it. It's absolutely ridiculous. And he's got a Substack on just that. Exclusive, Minneapolis police outraged after being told to not assist ICE agents who were under attack. And his Substack will also be linked directly below. It's definitely going to be the only Substack link that's down there. And this is from Secretary Marco Rubio. And he says, today, the Trump administration is sanctioning 2 international criminal court judges directly engaged in politicized and illegitimate actions against Israel. The United States has been clear. We will continue to respond with significant and tangible consequences to protect against the ICC's lawfare, abuse of power, and blatant disregard for the sovereignty of the United States and Israel. And this comes out of DEA Louisville. The Louisville Division agents seized nearly 89 million lethal doses of fentanyl this year. Fentanyl is the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45 and our nation's greatest drug threat. DEA's Fentanyl Free America campaign meeting this threat head on. And actually, that's probably hashtag Fentanyl Free America. And they've got a link here to DEA.gov. Fentanyl Free America. Okay, maybe it's not hashtag, it's just Fentanyl Free America. DEA's unwavering commitment to protect the United States from synthetic opioids by disrupting the fentanyl supply chain, reducing its availability, and saving American lives. So how long is this?
Okay, fentanyl is the most dangerous drug threat our nation has ever faced. It's a silent killer, devastating families, tearing apart communities, and claiming lives every day. At DEA, we are unwavering in our mission to protect the American people from this deadly poison. Fentanyl-free America is a shared commitment to safeguard our families, our communities, and our future. DEA is leading a unified effort to eliminate this threat by disrupting the fentanyl supply chain, reducing its availability, and holding those responsible accountable. But a fentanyl-free America goes well beyond drug enforcement. It's about prevention, education, and partnership. Through our work with law enforcement, community leaders, industry partners, and families like yours, we are raising awareness, sharing knowledge, and empowering Americans to take action. This mission has never been more urgent. Every step we take together brings us closer to a safer, stronger America and securing a brighter future for generations to come. Join DEA in this fight for a fentanyl-free America.
All right. See, I bet at this point, I'm sure most, if not almost every American has had fentanyl affect them in some way, shape, or form. Mostly somebody that they know, whether if it's a relative or maybe even like a friend of a friend who OD'd and died on fentanyl. I haven't had anybody in my family, at least not that I know of. Actually, I have a first cousin who died from a drug overdose, but I honestly don't know which drug it was. I think it was like meth or something, but it could have been fentanyl. I don't know. I haven't spoken to that side of my family in a long time, but there's an internet personality that I've followed for years. His name is Music Biz Marty, and he died from a fentanyl overdose back in, it was in February. And that was kind of devastating, man. That was a hard loss because he was a hell of an entertaining guy. Not famous by any means. It's a very niche part of the internet where he found himself, but like a very entertaining guy. And that was a pretty horrific loss. I didn't even know the dude even took fentanyl, but he was kind of a wild guy. He would pretty much take whatever drugs that he had in front of him, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, it was a heavy loss, man. It's very sad. All right, so FBI, 8 hours ago, want to be part of protecting U.S. critical infrastructure? InfraGard, a partnership program between the FBI and members of the private sector, is now accepting applications for new members. InfraGard provides business leaders with the tools and network needed to better protect the American people. You can learn more right here on FBI.gov. And of course, oh yeah, it's going to verify whether if you're a human or not. Got to click on the little box. Brought to you by Cloudflare. Yep, how the FBI works with businesses. The Office of the Private Sector oversees the Bureau's vital engagement and information sharing efforts with businesses and the industry. So yeah, there's info there if you want to check that out. That will be linked. And I got this from Rapid Response. Got one more from them. Breaking, Secretary Kennedy announces 6 decisive actions to protect children from chemical and surgical mutilation. So I obviously should have included that further up. Sometimes that happens. I try to group all related stories together, but I dropped the ball on this one. So anyway, it's a quote from Secretary Kennedy, so we'll just hear him say it.
Doctors assume a solemn obligation to protect children. Yet doctors across the country now provide needless and irreversible sex-rejecting procedures that violate their sacred Hippocratic oath by endangering the very lives that they are sworn to safeguard. The American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, peddled the lie that chemical and surgical sex-rejecting procedures could be good for children who suffer from gender dysphoria. They betrayed the estimated 300,000 American youth ages 13 to 17, conditioned to believe that sex can be changed. They betrayed their Hippocratic oath to do no harm.
They're psychotic.
So-called gender-affirming care has inflicted lasting physical and psychological damage on vulnerable young people.
Yeah, and a quick note, affirming care, that doesn't just pertain to gender dysphoria. Apparently there's this whole new sector in quote-unquote medicine where you can go see an affirming therapist and you pay them hundreds of dollars an hour to tell them what you believe is wrong with you, and they just affirm everything that you believe is wrong with you. Oh, you're exactly right. This is exactly happening to you. And apparently it's not just gender. Apparently it's stretching out into other things. I don't know, like maybe multiple personality or what have you.
This is not medicine. It is malpractice.
Pseudo.
We're done with junk science driven by ideological pursuits, not the well-being of children.
Not at all.
Peer-reviewed report published by the HHS Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health last month confirms that sex-rejecting procedures impose medical dangers and lasting harm on children who receive these interventions. So today we are taking 6 decisive actions.
6.
Guided by gold standard science and the week 1 executive order from President Trump to protect children from chemical and surgical mutilation. This morning I signed a declaration. Sex-rejecting procedures are neither safe nor effective treatment for children with gender dysphoria.
I'm very glad they're finally working on this, man. I've honestly been looking for this on and off throughout the year to see when the Trump administration was going to start moving on this in HHS, and now they are. So that's good. It's good that they're finally cracking down on this. And to be honest, I would rather listen to Secretary Kennedy's voice on a daily basis than the likes of Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom. And it looks like I got one more. The president has made child protection a national priority. The Make Our Children Healthy Again demonstrates that commitment. Sex-rejecting procedures rob children of their futures. So these are from 2 different accounts. It is possible that this might... Oh, no, it's not. Okay, this is only 14 seconds, so we'll hear his statement on that.
President Trump has made child protection a national priority. The Make Our Children Healthy Again strategy demonstrates that commitment. Sex-rejecting procedures rob children of their futures.
You know, like, good. I'm very glad with what he said. Just a quick comment down here on this, on the deaf person, interpreter, whoever. There was a situation that happened. I think it was in my state in Florida before a hurricane hit. It might have been in another state, but I think it was hurricane related, where the governor or a politician was given a statement, and they had the sign language interpreter doing her thing, but she didn't know a lick of sign language. She was just making just nonsense sign language. And that video went viral. This might have been like a year ago or so. It might have, no, actually, I think it was longer ago than Hurricane Helene or Milton. Maybe it was like around Hurricane Ian or something like that. But I remember that happening and hearing about that and how she got fired and you know, like it was just this whole big debacle. But ever since I've seen that, I now have doubts that anybody who's doing sign language knows what the hell they're doing. I'm convinced that this dude is not he's just like making up just random nonsense. All right. So House Committee on Natural Resources. A broken NEPA process has real economic consequences. An estimated $1.5 trillion is tied up by permitting delays, costing the U.S. economy roughly $140 billion in lost growth each year. The hashtag Speed Act. It's the Speed Act. It gives investors the certainty and speed needed to bring jobs and projects back to America. And let's hope that happens. Like, look, man, I mentioned this about a week ago. You know how long it took for them to build the entire interstate highway system all across America? It's something like 20,000 miles of interstate highways, which includes all the bridges, all the tunnels, all the overpasses. Constructing through all the major cities. Like imagine all the properties that they had to raise to the ground with all this eminent domain, the mountain of paperwork it must have taken and court proceedings to have to essentially seize land to construct 20,000 miles of interstate highways across America. Which, by the way, only it cost-wise, I don't have the number, but even the cost wasn't that much. It was something like only a few $1 billion or something like that. They had to level the land. They had to flatten, or they had to excavate 20 miles worth of land. They had to carve through mountains with tunnels and like all of this construction all across America to build our interstate highway system. It only took up 20 years. That's it, 20 years, or like maybe 25. But it took less than 30 years to build 20,000 miles of interstate highway. And now you'd be lucky to have a freaking overpass built in like, 7 years or something like that. Like we had this, we had an expressway that was constructed here locally. I live in Pinellas County in the St. Pete area, and they just finished the Gateway Expressway. They've been talking about building that thing for like 15, 20 years. They finally broke construction on it. It took them like 6 years, like 5-6 years to build this thing. And it's only comprised of like 4 miles, maybe something like that. It's fucking ridiculous. So it's good that they're getting rid of red tape because it is holding up a lot of funds. It's holding up a lot of our economy. And it's not just for road construction. It's also like with housing, commercial complexes, like pretty much everything across the board, I would imagine. All right, so federal highway. Or wait, did it? No, nope. I did not play this video.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong
get a little ahead of myself.
Of the Speed Act. America's permitting system is broken, and today an estimated $1.5 trillion in economic value is tied up in projects waiting for approval, costing our economy roughly $140 billion every year in lost growth. Instead of encouraging responsible development, our system too often rewards bad actors driven by ideology rather than legitimate concerns. Endless litigation has become the single biggest obstacle to building energy, infrastructure, and critical projects in this country.
All common sense.
At the same time, energy demands is projected to grow by 50% by 2050. The question is
probably going to be more.
Will we rise to meet that demand?
And EVs.
Not with our current permitting process. The SPEED Act brings common sense reform. It limits judicial review under NEPA to 150 days. It directs stakeholders to engage during the public comment process and tightens the scope of review so agencies take a hard look at expected impacts. Permitting reform unleashes American energy.
Yield the gentleman 30 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized.
Hey, there you go.
The bill allows America to build again, produce energy again, and stop being held hostage by litigious groups content to see jobs and investment move overseas. Permitting reform unleashes American energy and the American economy. I urge my colleagues to support the SPEED Act, and I yield back.
He's like, man, you're on such a good roll. I'm going to give you I'll give you 30 seconds of my time. All right, so Federal Highway Administration, don't be like Clark Griswold. FHWA would like to remind you to transport your Christmas trees responsibly over America's roads. They're a little late with that message. I would imagine that almost everybody's got their Christmas trees by now. Although, yeah, I mean, that really should go without saying, but they're just reminding you, Federal Highway Administration, be responsible when you're transporting your Christmas tree. And the U.S. Department of Education, from 10 hours ago, on the 6th day of Christmas, Trump McMahon gave to thee 6 pieces of school choice guidance. And once again, I ain't singing it because I can't sing. La, 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 la. 6 pieces of school choice guidance. All right. So they're doing that every day on U.S. Department of Education. So if you haven't watched my previous episodes, I did the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd. And anyway, we're moving on to Rapid Response 47. This evening, the president announced warrior dividends for our great service members. And this was actually yesterday evening. A $1,776 non-taxable lump sum payment being sent out in time for Christmas. Democrats react. That's not even that much money. I mean, they're always going to have something to say about it, but let's hear what they have to say.
And he can promote 1776 costs all he wants and giving out a check. That worked for him the first time. 1776, that's less than a rent check in D.C. I don't even know what the impact of that is going to be. I want
to bring. Well, not everybody lives in big, giant blue states, lady. Not everybody lives in these mega cities. Not everybody does. But of course, they're never going to be happy. If Trump did it, it's always going to be bad, no matter what. Senator Todd Young, the Midwest is ready to make America ships again. And he's got this article, which he linked an image of it. So on the Hill, first in Maryland, Midwest side story, Senators Tammy Baldwin and Todd Young are leading a bipartisan group of senators from the Great Lakes states in lobbying the White House to shape its new Maritime Prosperity Zones initiative around the Midwest, arguing the region has what it takes to boost U.S. shipbuilding and manufacturing. That's a great idea. What they're saying, the 8 lawmakers in a letter to President Donald Trump obtained by Joe pointed to his executive order in April calling for these zones outside the traditional coastal shipbuilding centers. They noted that the Great Lakes are already home to shipyards, steel producers, and more. The senators recommended defining the prosperity zones by industrial activity rather than by geography, which would avoid creating winners and losers based on location and allow emerging shipyards to qualify. They also encouraged the administration to support a Great Lakes shipbuilding consortium and expand federal investments to modernize aging shipyards, ports, and supply chains. Made in the USA, the letter also calls for stricter enforcement of Buy American rules, federal procurement requirements that government projects use U.S.-made materials, as well as military vessel repair work to be performed on the Great Lakes, and more federal dollars for workforce training and apprenticeships. I think that's a wonderful idea, man. That's a really good idea. Great Lakes they're tucked away deep into the interior of the country, very safe from any potential coastal attacks, things like that. And plus, I'm sure that the states neighboring or surrounding the Great Lakes, they could probably use a little bit of the extra boost in the economy. I'm sure Michigan could probably certainly use it. I'm sure northern Indiana could probably use it, like up in the Gary area. I believe they did steel manufacturing in Gary, I think. Pretty sure they did. All right, defense news. 11 hours ago, the latest on U.S.-led Ukraine peace talks and how leaks, deadlines, and shifting drafts are already reshaping battlefield planning. This is going to be on defensenews.com. How a U.S.-led peace plan in Ukraine is reshaping global alliances. This is out of Kyiv, Ukraine. The problem with this round of negotiations is that they lack all credibility. One senior European diplomat with knowledge of the peace process told Military Times this week, "It's just stupid." The exasperation of the official who was granted anonymity to discuss negotiations that are sensitive and ongoing comes after weeks of what he described as an endlessly frustrating peace push built around damage control, public pressure, and shifting drafts that has forced Ukraine and its European backers to pretend to play along, even as demands circulated that are impossible for Ukraine to accept. There is no art to this deal-making, he added. It started with a leak. On November 20th, just as President Trump began floating a Thanksgiving countdown for a deal, a 28-point peace framework was made public by Axios. Within hours, the same set of points was being described in different rooms as an opening bid, a near-finished agreement, or an instrument of pressure so one-sided that critics compared it to information warfare. Kyiv's posture through that early confusion was restrained. It stayed publicly disciplined, offered little detail, and declined to engage the leak-driven blow-by-blow, while allies tried to work out what the process actually meant in real time. By December 4th, the anxiety had broken the surface. Der Spiegel published a leaked transcript of a private European call that sounded less like allied coordination than emergency self-defense. French President Emmanuel Macron warned that the U.S. might betray Ukraine on the issue of territory, a phrasing the Elysee later disputed. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said Washington was playing games both with you and with us. Finnish President Alexander Stubb said it most strikingly. We cannot leave Ukraine and Volodymyr Zelensky alone with these guys. 2 days later, the timeline snapped into place. After several days of U.S.-Ukraine talks in Miami, Washington formalized its new posture in the national security strategy, including language about strategic stability with Russia and ending the perception and preventing the reality of NATO as a perpetually expanding alliance. Moscow welcomed the framing while rejecting key elements of the peace track. For those in uniform, the unpredictably goes beyond politics. Russia followed the Miami talks with one of its largest combined attacks on Ukraine, sending 653 drones and 51 missiles aimed largely at Ukraine's energy infrastructure, according to officials in Kyiv. The so-called peace negotiations are driving real decisions about war posturing and capabilities as Russia's full-scale invasion trudges into its fourth year, man. It's already been 4 years. Which, by the way, this image, it says that people are hiding in a metro station being used as a bomb shelter during a Russian drone's attack in Kyiv, Ukraine. That was on November 14th of this year. By December 7th, the messaging shifted decisively from pressure to strategic uncertainty. At the Doha Forum, Donald Trump Jr. was asked if his father might walk away. "I think he may," he said. "What's good about my father and what's unique about my father is that you don't know what he's going to do. The fact that he's not predictable forces everyone to actually deal in an intellectually honest capacity. As drafts leak and deadlines slide, the uncertainty is now showing up in major battlefield calculations. The likely product," the official said, "is a messy ceasefire that freezes lines, buys Russia time, and forces Europe to plan for the war's next phase. Less peace through strength than war through instability, with U.S. support treated as a variable, not a guarantee. Peace through strength or war through uncertainty? The volatility hits where it always hits first, logistics and posture. Ship now or hold. Plan for a pause or plan for another winter of strikes. It's a pinball machine inside the head of our president because he keeps bouncing off the walls of the pinball machine, and you just don't know where he's going to go next." Ian Kelly, a former head of the State Department's Office of Russian Affairs and U.S. Ambassador to Georgia and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, told Military Times. The Miami talks offer the clearest example of what Kelly meant. The public story of progress has moved faster than officials across the Atlantic could keep pace, leaving them questioning what the Americans are actually proposing, what Moscow is actually prepared to concede, and what Washington is willing to guarantee. Zelensky's language has stayed deliberately narrow. Over the weekend, he described the discussions with Trump's envoys as constructive, though not easy, stressing that the American envoys are aware of Ukraine's core positions, but that some issues can only be discussed in person. Defense Minister Rustem Umerov reinforced the same reality in plainer terms. In a December 8th post on X, Umerov wrote, "We have worked for several days in the United States together with Andrei Ignatov, with representatives of President Trump. I am grateful for the constructive work." Umerov added that the primary task of the Ukrainian team was to obtain from the American side complete information about their conversation in Moscow and all drafts of current proposals in order to discuss them in detail with the president of Ukraine. Kiev's diplomats have also been trying to rein in the chaos. And let me see how much farther. Okay, so this is going to go on quite a ways. And so I got a good start on it. If you want to finish off the rest of it, holy cow, man, this article is extremely detailed. And that's on Defense News. I think more often than not, Defense News, they put a lot of detail into their articles. So that'll be down below for you. U.S. mission to NATO. We will work with allies and partners to maintain global and regional balances of power to prevent the emergence of dominant adversaries. That's why, for instance, U.S. Marines train with NATO partners to enhance cold weather skills. Joint training across the Arctic strengthens interoperability between U.S. and allied forces. And this is by the U.S. Marines. Let's take a look.
This is how we fight in the Arctic. Not from behind a desk, but through snow, silence, and sub-zero grit. No roads, we move anyway. No visibility, we see more.
Hell yeah, we do.
This is joint war fighting in a place that punishes mistakes. We don't
That didn't
flinch,
look like the Arctic.
we adapt.
The high north. Hell yeah, man. Some hardcore training. God bless the Marines. They're fighting the good fight, as always. With all that rigorous training, man, they got a lot more strength than I do. There is no way I can handle sub-zero temperatures. I'd freeze my ass off. All right, so Rapid Response 47, U.S. Trade Rep Ambassador Greer on the EU tech fines. And he gives kind of a long quote, so I'll just play it out for
first of all,
us to listen
the
to.
EU itself knows that it lags on innovation. We had the EU put out the Mario Draghi report a year or two ago, talking about how what a lack of innovation they have and high regulation. So there's incentive on the EU side. On the U.S. side, there are a number of types of investigations that we could conduct to look into this and potentially take action. President Trump's been talking about this for several months, so this is not a new issue, unfortunately. And even before that, we've been dealing with it for years.
Well, yeah, because regulation stifles innovation. And I'm sure Europe knows that firsthand. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, we got another one from 3 hours ago. Content creators hungry for clicks and the cash they bring are muddying feeds with AI-generated slop featuring federal law enforcement officers and agents. Don't be fooled. Know the sure signs of AI. Now, AI is developing more rapidly, of course. It's constantly evolving. However, these core signs definitely still signal whether the video is AI or not. And it includes strange glitches, nonsense text, letters, and symbols, which, yeah, AI, I don't know when they're going to get that fixed, but that's still a while. If you're familiar with generating AI images through text prompts, if you generate like a building that has a sign on it, the sign, it never says anything. It's just jumbled up gibberish letters. Sometimes it looks like alien text, unless you specifically, like if you put a phrase in quotes and you directly tell it to put this on the sign, it'll spell it out for you. But yeah, generally AI videos, AI images, when it comes to text, letters, and symbols in the video itself, it's usually jumbled up nonsense. And number 3, unrealistic body movements, also physics-defying motion, and poor audio-visual syncing, and also warped body parts, which, yeah, that's very true. Yeah, AI, it's still pretty rough with, like, sometimes it'll add, like, an extra finger on the hand, or it'll have, like, 4 fingers and not 5, just as an example. So, anyway, yeah, those are pretty good signs to look out for. But AI is evolving. I'm sure they're trying to work out those kinks as we speak. All right, so Rep. Jeff Hurd from 5 hours ago. Today, the House passed the Pet and Livestock Protection Act to delist the gray wolf from the endangered species list. During floor debate on this bill, one of my Democratic colleagues asked why we're talking about wolves instead of affordability. Of course they are. About halfway through, I went off my prepared remarks to answer that question directly. For Colorado District 3 and for our entire country, this issue is about affordability, supporting rural America, and protecting the livelihoods of the families who put food on our tables. Give it a watch here.
That's for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am an original co-sponsor of the Pet and Livestock Protection Act because it delists the gray wolf under the Endangered Species Act. This gives wildlife managers more control in states while protecting domestic animals from wolf attacks. For years, Republican and Democratic administrations alike under Presidents Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden have all reached the same conclusion. The gray wolf population is healthy, has exceeded all recovery goals, and can sustain life from a variety of threats and should be delisted. The Endangered Species Act was never meant to be a permanent listing statute. It was designed to recover species, and once recovery is achieved, to step back. But that's not what's happening. Environmental groups have repeatedly run to courts to block delisting, ignoring the science, and overriding bipartisan agency findings. The cost is regulatory whiplash, uncertainty, and paralysis, while ranchers, landowners, and rural communities pay the price. Mr. Speaker, I want to respond to something that was said at the beginning of this debate. One of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle criticized this Congress for discussing wolves and said we should be focused on affordability. Well, first of all, we have been and are voting on bills that improve life and make it more affordable for every American. But here's the thing. For the ranchers and outfitters in rural Coloradans that I represent, this is affordability.
Yeah, they're killing their livestock.
Their livelihood. This is how food gets to tables across America, whether you live in a small town or in the largest city. This is a way of life that America depends on, and it deserves respect, not dismissal. H.R. 845 is supported by science. It respects each state's circumstances, and it delivers protection for rural America. I urge support and yield back.
Well, because I assume that so long the gray wolf is listed as endangered, you can't kill it because it's an endangered species. So if it's attacking your livestock, not really a whole lot you could do about it. Maybe you could report it to whatever entity, Fish and Wildlife or whatever, and they can handle it, but that's not really going to save your livestock from getting attacked in the moment. And I'm sure their response time is probably a little longer than a few minutes. Realistically, it probably takes them hours or days to show up. But there was another post that I came across with this exact this exact topic. I believe it was a different politician who was talking about it, but I couldn't show it because they had a board with an image of a dog that was, for lack of a better word, massacred by a gray wolf. I'm not going to get into details, but it was way too spicy for YouTube. I actually kind of wish that I had reposted that so you can have a look at it. But yeah, anyway, it's nothing pretty to look at. They were just showing the gory details as to the damage that these gray wolves inflict on farms and rural communities. And apparently their population is very healthy, so I guess they should be delisting them by now. All right, U.S. Department of Education. This also was posted today, as I think everything so far, except I think only one post. They were all posted today. So the Trump administration has delivered on breaking up the federal education bureaucracy, restoring merit, and returning education to the states. Our mission to make education great again is just getting started. I don't know if they have anything article-wise. They do, from ed.gov. So this is an article that they are sharing. President Trump's first year, Education in America. Learn more about the department's top education priorities and progress achieved in the first year of the Trump-Vance administration. Returning education to the states. In the first year of the Trump-Vance administration, ED has advanced President Trump's goal to return education to the states. And let's see. So U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon made significant progress in fulfilling one of President Trump's most ambitious campaign promises, returning education to the states. Since its inception in 1980, U.S. Department of Education has spent $3 trillion. My God. Yet recent national test scores show that just 35% of high school seniors are proficient in reading. These are the lowest scores on record. I'd like to know what that proficiency score was back in 1980 or even in 1979. I wonder if they actually have a graphic. No, they probably don't. Or no, 2024 assessment since 1979. Okay, yeah, so per pupil spending has increased more than 245% since the Department of Education was founded. That is effing-sane. Okay, so where did that go? Nope, that's not it. That's not it. I don't know why they tab these things so randomly. I guess let me try this again. All right. Oh, yeah, that's right. I clicked on it. Never mind. Just hit the back button. Okay, so lowest test scores on record. Under the leadership of President Trump, Secretary McMahon is breaking up the federal education bureaucracy and prioritizing students and families. Education Department took concrete steps to return education to the states and empower parents in their child's education by partnering with several agencies to break up the federal education bureaucracy and refocus programs and activities to better serve students, including workforce development programs and K-12 programs and post-secondary programs. Also touring a variety of public, private, charter, magnet, and micro schools in 24 of 50 states to empower families and hear from students, teachers, and leaders on best practices in their own communities. Also awarding $500 million to the charter schools programs, the largest investment in the program ever. Championing the largest federal expansion of education freedom in history, urging states to expand education choice by using up to 3% of their federal Title I allocation to support education choice initiatives, encouraging states to continue to maximize parent options for choosing the safest school setting for their children. Also providing guidance to states so they can prioritize school improvement dollars to districts that will turn around underperforming schools and give students school choice options. Advising states to use waiver to maximize opportunity and improve students' academic achievement. Releasing additional guidance on how states might provide equitable services for students enrolled in private schools in more efficient and effective ways to best meet students' needs. And finally, issuing guidance to states on the EdFlex option to encourage local innovation. And then they've got plenty of other things to go through, including the Education Department. They removed bureaucratic barriers and invested in education. And they've also got some links here for more information. A lot of money being awarded, which is a good thing if it's used properly. All right. And the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. And they say a new era of aviation is taking flight. If you're interested in shaping the future of aviation, now is the moment. Now, don't miss this deadline. Apply now at the following link, which is at federalregister.gov. And they have a video here from Secretary Sean Duffy calling all aviators. The U.S. is leading the way in innovating our skies. Now we are looking for the best and brightest to partner with the U.S. Department of Transportation on our mission to fast-track the use of advanced air mobility. And the deadline is tomorrow. Okay, so this is a pretty last-minute announcement. So be a part of the golden age of transportation. He links a video
122 years ago, two bicycle designers from Dayton, Ohio changed the world. When their powered flying machine took flight, the Wright brothers unlocked a new frontier of transportation innovation. Through a century of trial and error, mankind conquered the skies, connecting the world and unleashing opportunity. But American innovation is just getting started.
We have a president, we have a DOT that want to see those innovators innovate in America and then export them around the world.
eVTOLs are going to make the airspace far more interesting and far more fun. And we have to be prepared for that and seamlessly implement their involvement in using the NAS. This is time when we don't know how the world is going to change, but it's going to change in the way people and products move, which is exciting.
I don't know, man. Good luck getting the public to trust that, man. I would say, I haven't seen any polling on it, but I would imagine that the majority of Americans probably don't even trust self-driving or robo-taxis, the Waymos. I don't know. Maybe they do. I don't know. But flying, that's a whole nother animal, man. I don't know if I would trust a fully autonomous plane. I don't know about all that. Even though I would imagine, once they get all the bugs worked out, it probably would be a lot more reliable than a human pilot. But I'm not so sure, man. It'll probably take a while to earn the public's trust on it, but we'll probably be getting there probably sooner than we realize. Who knows, man? Maybe 5 or even 10 years from now, maybe most planes will be self-flying. I don't know. So Trump's Transportation Secretary Sean P. Duffy unveils new plan to fast-track advanced air mobility vehicles. And we've got the reading material on that here. So the EIPP, it's going to include at least 5 pilot projects, which will run for 3 years after the first project becomes operational. Envisioned EIPP operations include piloted and unmanned approaches to short-range air taxis, longer-range fixed-wing flights, also cargo, and logistics and supplies serving emergency management, medical transport, or offshore energy facilities, and also increasing automation safety. So that is quite interesting. Things are moving fast, man. We're in the 21st century. It's supposed to be the information age, the age of technological advancement. All right, the White House. And the White House says, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart, featuring this year's favorite ornament. And they tagged in Rep. Jeffries and Senator Schumer. I can only imagine what this ornament's going to be, so let's take a look. Of course, it's the sombrero. How you like that, Team Obama? Chuggy Chuck Schumer. Flipping your cheeseburgers. All right, from the White House. I actually kind of enjoyed this White House social media account, or whoever's running it. They've been a hoot this year. Okay, from NASA 3 hours ago, and you know what that means. Once I get to NASA, we're reaching the end of the video. We're continuing to observe the interstellar comet 3I Atlas as it heads out of the solar system. Have questions about the comet? Or the comet, join us on Friday, December 19th, and they're linking Reddit. I don't know why they're choosing Reddit, but I guess they're going to have this discussion on Reddit, of all places. And yeah, 3I Atlas, the number 3 is there because it's only the third interstellar object that we have ever observed arriving into the solar system from out in interstellar space, which is what the I stands for, interstellar. 3I Atlas. Okay, NASA. Oh yeah, here's the GIF. It actually shows the trajectory that it's taken. So Earth is over here, and as it passes by, so it was kind of on the opposite end when it was passing by the sun. And yep, I'll just give it one more play if it'll, yeah, there it goes. Moving, I believe it's moving over 100,000 miles an hour. It's moving extremely fast. It is hauling ass through the solar system, and it's on its way out. And it's the third object that we've ever detected from interstellar space that's traveling through the solar system. The first one was back in 2017, so it was pretty recent. That was Oumuamua. It's the first object that they discovered from interstellar space. And finally, NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman. And he says, and that's almost a wrap on day one. Today, President Trump signed a historic commitment to American leadership in space, and NASA, along with our commercial and international partners, will deliver. The greatest adventure continues. Let's check this out.
As a pilot and an astronaut and lifetime space enthusiast.
Jared Isaacman, the mission commander.
Jared Isaacman, commercial astronaut.
I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to serve as the 15th administrator of NASA.
Yeah, they finally confirmed him. Only took damn near a freaking year.
Jared Isaacman!
I believe Secretary Sean Duffy, Transportation, I think, was overseeing NASA.
NASA is the most respected and accomplished space agency in the world.
Got a hell of a budget, too. That was awesome when they landed that on Mars.
Is yet to come. Under President Trump's leadership, we will turn the page and start a bold new chapter at NASA with a relentless focus on the mission. America will lead in the ever-expanding high ground of space. We will never come in second place. To succeed, NASA must focus on achieving the near impossible, doing what no other agency or organization or nation is even capable of accomplishing. Under the leadership of President Trump, we will get the job done, and when we do, we will inspire the next generation to want to reach even higher. I'm honored to serve. Ready to get to work.
Ready to get to work at NASA. And that will do it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed the video, please give the video a quick like and subscribe to the channel. It'll mean so much to me if you subscribe. And I'll be dropping a new show every evening, Monday through Friday, covering the swamp and everyone in it, the bureaucracy, the agencies, and the politicians. Also, I post daily over on X, so feel free to comment over there too if you'd like. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your night, and God bless America.